Power, a novel by Thomas Hollyday. Part 1. Seem like most people are peed off about something or the other. When they find someone who agrees with them, they join up and pee together. Comment by a popular Maryland tent revival preacher in 2015. Chapter 1. Monday. The harbor water was not as blue as it used to be. Or maybe this was John's imagination. Morning mist drifted away as the hot July sunlight warmed Baltimore. In the distance, a black tanker was pumping its oil cargo to huge storage tanks. John Loggerman tapped his fingers on the steel rail of his freighter, River Niger. She was trim with her bright blue hull and vertical stack with the emblazoned letter H. The ship was berthed and quiet from her 6,600-mile voyage across the Atlantic from Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Her final run up the Patapsco River had ended at Sparrows Point this morning when the pilot and tug had left them. This was her homecoming of sorts, as she had long ago been constructed near this yard to carry war supplies to England during World War II. As he looked around the harbor, he spotted and heard something unexpected. In front of the gate of the pier area, a noisy crowd protested along the barrier fence. He wondered what these people, many in colorful green clothes, were so angry about. Loggerman studied the peaceful harbor water. He sensed its difference from the pirogue-laden water of his vessel's African home port of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. The smells of fish and seaweed were certainly unique, and he welcomed these scents of America. Matter of fact, he'd have been happier if it were in a port in Maine, like Portsmouth. He was a downeaster, a man from Maine, with the muscular frame, the tanned, intelligent face, the worn khaki pants, and the blue work shirt. In his case, fastened at his belt, he carried a K-bar knife, as if ready to splice a line or gut an enemy. He inherited the knife from his grandfather, a Marine survivor of Iwo Jima, was taught to use it by his father, a fighter in Vietnam, and used it himself as a Marine in the Middle East and later against terrorists in Africa. He knew the meaning of wear and scare. Loggerman was vice president of computer systems for the Henry Company, an American firm partnered with African investors. Henry was one of the fastest growing conglomerates in West Africa. Its profitable African partner companies were located at the high-tech New City, specializing in oil leases, electronic assembly, and cocoa and warehousing products for its countrywide retail sales. The shipyard was old, constructed during World War II for ship manufacturing, and then allowed to rust. Its manager, Stoney Howard, stood far below him. Stoney was a wharf rat, the kind of man who inhabited shipyards. He had sponsored its modern reconstruction and brought back the jobs. Stoney was alight with his purpose, his love of the ships, and his hope illuminated his pride in the new cranes and piers. He called to Loggerman, whom he'd known over the past Henry voyages to Baltimore. He said, "Captain Jimmy brought her in again, soft as a baby. I didn't hear a single one of these old pilings creaking as the hull came to rest. Maybe it's because you installed all new piers. You got that right. Glad you noticed. I'll tell my advertising agency. No more mentioning 1940s creaks in our timbers. Above the two men, the tall figure of Captain James Abada stood in the July sunlight. He oversaw them from the wing of the bridge, resplendent in his blue and white uniform. He provided his powerful smile, showing teeth in amusement. His name, Abada, was one of the native words for creatures of magic. Loggerman often wondered about the man. It might be true he held magic in his bones. Loggerman sat many nights staring at his friend's impenetrable African eyes over a chess game, trying to figure out Captain Jimmy's thoughts, with no success. Captain Jimmy said, "Figured might have been some due to Loggerman helping the crew with the tying up to the pier. Maybe it's his talent with the spring lines." "I bet so," called Stoney, smiling, knowing full well the captain was joking. His crew was well trained. Loggerman had not needed to lift one of the heavy lines. "I'll put in my report back to Joe." Joe was Joe Henry, sitting thousands of miles away up country in his new city. He was the head of the corporation. He had mastermind in little more than a decade this large pioneering African-American firm. It was a growing Silicon Valley, the biggest and most successful technological conglomerate in a continent of fascinating and warring countries. "As usual, Captain Jimmy, you get all the compliments," Loggerman joked, then asked, "Any more word on the oil pipe, Stoney?" The shipyard manager hesitated, looking over his shoulder at the placards held by the mob at the gate. The angry protesters pressed against the wobbly steel fence of Stoney's yard. "This crowd is growing. A lot of them making a noise out there. Hope the city police can handle them." He smiled. "Come ashore, Loggerman. I'll tell you what I told Joe. I called him right after the pilot said you'd started up the Patapsco this morning." Loggerman knew what Stoney would say. He had, however, heard the same story already several times as they crossed the ocean. The freighter would stay moored in Baltimore several days longer, waiting for the shipment. As he stepped down to the pier, he followed Stoney's eyes to the far end of the yard. He saw the cardboard protest posters. Yes, he thought, this was not going to be a regular cruise to load needed equipment for the corporation. He knew the problem. Henry Company drew some of its business from pumping oil. Right now in the States, energy and oil were bad words to mobs protesting in the cities.